Hey guys, how are you? Jeff Vita here with the Kung Fu Driving Podcast. Welcome to Kung Fu Driving Live. We're just waiting for John to turn on his camera. Thank you all for being in the audience today. It's going to be a fun conversation with GIAN, and hopefully he'll be popping up here soon. GIAN, you there, man?
Yeah, I'm like a grandpa. I'm clicking on all the buttons.
No worries.
Broadcast to the world. Is that the one?
No. Just turn on your video. You're good to go.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to find it because
down in the lower left, there should be that little 2-line hamburger menu. You should. Oh, actually, if you click on your profile, you should be able to turn on video there.
Okay.
I just invited you to video.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay.
GIAN Galang, thank you for joining us this morning. How are you, brother?
Thank you. Feeling like a grandpa with this. But thank you. Thanks for your patience. Thank you.
Not at all. It's great to have you. So we have some guests in the audience. You probably recognize a few of them there, but it's exciting to talk with you. So thanks for hanging out this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, it's cool. So my guest today is artist, illustrator, martial artist. GIAN Galang. If there's anyone out there that puts the artist in martial artist, this is one of those guys right there. So, GIAN, talk to me a little bit. Then let's get into what came first for you, the arts or the martial arts.
Well, for me, it's always seemed like one and the same, but it's definitely art because I've been drawing ever since I can remember. But the things I was drawing were always inspired by martial arts. My favorite comic books and TV shows and cartoons and movies were Ninja Turtles. I would draw characters from Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. So I always loved getting into their specific fighting styles, their special moves, stuff like that. That was what was always interesting to me about drawing the characters. So for me, it was always kind of one and the same.
Cool. I've got a few years on you. So what was the first cartoon or piece of art that kind of sparked that for you, if you can remember that far back?
I think it's Ninja Turtles. I mean, I think every kid that was in early '90s is Ninja Turtles because it's just everywhere for so long, And even I think I was a little too young when the first movie came out, but I still had the video, And then we had the cartoons. I had the toys and stuff and magazines, and actually even I think that one of the magazines was one of the reasons why I started doing martial arts was they had a spread on all these black belt karate kids, like breaking boards and stuff, and you're like, whoa, they got the same moves as the turtles and stuff like that. So I think for me it was all the same, kind of all the same stuff, like intertwined.
That's cool. Well, that's a good segue then. So what then drew you into martial arts, and what kind of styles do you study?
Well, yeah. So like I said, I guess it came from Ninja Turtles and all those things. Also, I lived in Hong Kong until I was 10, so I never thought of Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan as like kung fu movie stars. They were just the movie stars,
Right.
Like the Jackie Chan movies are just like always on TV and stuff. So it was kind of, I guess that you're just influenced by that. So I moved to the U.S. when I was 10, and the karate school in my town in Virginia was a Chun Kuk Do school, which is Chuck Norris's style. So basically, it was style that just mixed everything that Chuck Norris knew how to do. So it was like 90% Tang Sudo, which is like the Korean equivalent of Shotokan karate, and then it had a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He was like a blue belt at the time, and now he's a black belt and stuff. And I think we even had a couple like Krav Maga moves that was like in the whole curriculum. And so that's what I did when I was a kid, and then I got to college. I got exposed to a bunch of different martial arts, but I think I really fell in love with Muay Thai. It was just like so competitive, and that's kind of what I've been practicing ever since.
Cool. So how long have you been doing Muay Thai now?
Ever since college, I guess. I mean, right until pandemic, pretty much.
Wow.
I feel like I just haven't found the right time to go back to the gym. Like even if it's not a sparring class, it just feels like a little bit weird. Like hitting pads, just like people, everything,
Yeah.
sweat getting back on you. So, but I'm getting the itch. I've still been working out and stuff, but I'm getting tired of running and just running and lifting and stuff. So, um, yeah.
Tell me what it is about Muay Thai though that kind of attracted you to that art and kind of spurred you to stick with that particular style. Is there one thing that you really like about it as opposed to say Tang Sudo or Chuck Norris's style?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I was just getting my ass kicked right away. Because when you're a kid, you're like, oh yeah, I'm a black belt, and then you're like, oh, I'm a second degree black belt, and you're like, I'm winning the tournaments and stuff. But it's like totally different because well, obviously it's structured very differently. It's like point fighting and stuff, but then you know it's totally different when you're like in the ring and you're sparring with boxing gloves, and then you're just getting punched a lot in the face, which is just not that you don't get punched in the face in karate and stuff, but the rules are different.
Yeah.
So it was very challenging, like so challenging, like so, and I just realized like how little you box in traditional karate. And at that time, I was a big UFC fan. Like it was. I mean, it started like in the early '90s, but I was really kind of getting into it in college. So, all the guys would train Muay Thai for stand up and stuff like that. So, um, I think that maybe the competitive aspect was what drew me to it. Yeah.
Okay, so you're an artist, so you work with your hands. I'm an illustrator, a graphic designer myself. I know how important my hands are to me. Um,
Yeah.
how do you reconcile putting your hands at risk in Muay Thai and martial arts and still pursuing the art side of things?
I think it's just you just don't think about it. Like just like pretty much everything. Like doing leg kicks, and then, when you get the images of people, they get their shins broken. You just can't think of it. Like especially like um I have like really bad vision actually. I mean my contact my I so I have LASIK now, so I don't have
Okay.
contacts and stuff, but my contact lens prescription was super bad, and that would be one of the things I always kind of get like the contact knocked out in sparring and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, what if that happens, like in a fight or something like that? And it did happen in my first amateur, like in the first round, right away. Is like one of my contacts went out, and I was like, oh my god. But I feel like it's just like doing martial arts is like you either kind of gotta do it and then just not think too much about the consequences, which is kind of like a dumb thing to say, or else you're just not going to do it. So
I mean, I have studied American Kenpo myself,
yeah.
and I also study Sayak Kali. That's the Filipino knife blade system.
Oh yeah.
But I don't use my hands nearly as much as you do anymore. But I understand. I understand the sentiment. I don't think about it when I'm in the martial arts side of things. That's where my focus is. So I get you.
Yeah. There's like a certain level of risk. You know what? Like I actually think that it's relatively safe. That's like weird to say, but like my in-laws and my wife's side of the family, they're big snowboarders and skiers,
Oh,
and they've all gotten way worse accidents than I have. Like, just from snowboarding, like broken arms, broken, and I'm like, well, at least I'm like, I got my feet on the ground.
yeah, yeah.
We got pads and stuff, so I feel like there's a level of risk with a lot of things, physical. So.
All right, then where did the two worlds of art and martial arts come together for you really kind of solidly? When did you think I can put these two things together and do something cool with it?
Well, I guess, yeah, like I said, from when I was a kid, it was always kind of the same. The stuff I was drawing was like Street Fighter guys and
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat guys. But I guess professionally, I actually worked in advertising as an art director for 7 years before I made the full transition to illustrator and artist. And that was for a lot of reasons. I studied graphic design and illustration in college, and I found advertising as a way to be able to dabble in a lot of creative fields. But eventually I found what I've always loved is drawing and painting. So I would do my own projects. So MMA and UFC martial arts was just a natural thing that I was drawn to as a subject matter. Both because it took elements, I could incorporate elements that I like working with when I was a child. Like the graphic nature of comic books, the individual character traits of the Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat art, but it also incorporated figurative drawing, because these are real guys. This is the stuff that I loved getting into when I was in college. I love the challenge of figure drawing, making stuff real. And for me, this subject matter was kind of the ultimate figure drawing. It's like in college, you're like trained to, or at least in the illustration courses, you're trained to like paint people in different poses, whatever. But I see like MMA as like kind of like the ultimate expression of that, because there's so many different body types, so many styles, new techniques are invented, every event. There's so many angles. So for me, it's like endless inspiration.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of a natural jumping off point when I was coming up with personal projects to work on.
So on that note, capturing martial arts action in film is one thing. You turn on the camera, you have them go at it, you can see the moves, you see that action in space, and that's its own thing. How do you translate that movement and impact in your medium, which is 2D?
Man, that's like the driving force behind my inspiration. I feel like I'm so glad you asked that question. So for me, I use that exactly what you're saying, trying to capture a whole sequence of movements or a whole fighting technique or a series of techniques in one snapshot. And I love using that as an excuse to create abstractions or exaggerations in the artwork that make it look a little bit unusual, that kind of push it past just a normal portrait of a guy, or like a kind of like a copy of a photograph. I think it's these little exaggerations that try to emphasize movement that keep me experimenting. So, for example, maybe I'm trying to emphasize an impact. Maybe I'll use something more textural, or I'll paint on a different type of surface. Or maybe in one area I'm trying to emphasize speed. So maybe I'll use a little bit more wet substrate, something more slick. Sometimes I'll play with compositions if I'm trying to capture more of a sequence of a movement, like the beginning and the end of it. I'll do sort of a multiple exposure technique where I'll paint multiple limbs on one set of legs.
Cool.
So it just kind of gives me an excuse to get a little weird, Yeah.
And you did that really well on the cover and in the interior for the Criterion collection of Bruce Lee's greatest hits. So anybody that is a fan of the Kung Fu Driving podcast knows Bruce Lee, obviously, and is a fan of his films. As a martial artist, how excited were you to be involved with that particular project?
Oh man, that was a dream come true. I mean, I've had so many dream come true projects, but I mean, I was like gushing when I was talking to the art director about it because Bruce Lee was definitely before my time, but what I was talking to them about was everything that I was into was inspired by Bruce Lee. From the UFC, the first, big pop culture uh, showing of like that ultimate tournament is Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
My video games were Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. They all had like a Bruce Lee guy in it, and that was all inspired by that. Even like Ninja Turtles with the nunchucks, that the nunchucks came from Bruce Lee. So I feel like I'm like second generation Bruce Lee fan kind of thing. So yeah, when the art director at Criterion approached me to do it, it was just like a full circle thing, and really it was just a treat because in the artwork that I was that I've been doing up until that time, it was mostly like MMA based, and sometimes what's a little bit challenging is capturing that specific type of swagger or technique that a fighter has because a lot of these MMA guys, obviously they train in so many styles, and sometimes there's not like a distinguishing characteristic that that it's a little bit harder to draw that out. But Bruce Lee is like a showman, so I was having trouble culling down like what the most iconic visuals would be. He has like so many great, every shot is like so great aesthetically. His posing, his stances. And obviously it's because he's a showman. So from an artistic point of view, there was so much material to draw from. Even though he only had like 5 movies, I was like running through all those things. But yeah, I actually have I have the box art here, and I have the original paint. I actually sold the cover painting, but I have I'm holding on to the interior art. This was this is the interior art that I made for the gatefold. I had to paint on 2 pieces of paper because it was like really long, and I'll show you the actual gatefold. So basically, wait, is this working? So it's going from this way.
Yeah.
Oh, going from this way.
So for anybody that's listening to the audio of this, go over to the YouTube so you can see some of the video because Gian's holding up the original art for the gatefold. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah. So the idea for this was to create an image of Bruce Lee, a sequence, capture a sequence in motion. And the art director and I had an idea of capturing a sequence of movements that captured Bruce Lee and use a multiple exposure technique. So the first image is the start of the technique. The second is the middle, and then up until the end of the technique. But each figure would be a different iconic suit that Bruce used. So on the left starts out with like the yellow jumpsuit. In the middle he has like the wife beater. And then at the end he's all shredded up like Enter the Dragon. So it manifested itself like this.
Cool.
And I'm holding up the interior spread. But yeah, so I had to go with the sidekick because I felt like I was like, oh man, this is like a lot of horizontal space to cover. So I was like, what's the move that goes so far horizontally? And I was like, oh well, you got to do the sidekick. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if you go to Gian's website, I think he's got some behind the scenes footage of him using yourself as reference to get some of these poses down, right?
Yeah. So I actually do that. I shoot my own reference for all my artwork, and it's because of the lighting. I had a professor in college that was very influential, George Pratt, and he's an illustrator, so likeness and realism was something that he incorporates in his work. So when you're trying to capture something like that, capture a level of realism, even if you have abstract elements, you have your expressionism. He always stressed that, you know, get as much information as possible if you're going to use a reference. Design the information.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're just making stuff up. Which obviously, there's so many forms of art where you do make stuff up, like comic books and animation. You can't just shoot a reference for every single thing, every single lighting. But for what I'm trying to do, which is usually just one single image, um, that's more important to the work that I do. So I really try to design the lighting, and even though I had so much Bruce Lee material to work from, sometimes the shots are the lighting straight on, and there's different backgrounds and stuff like that, and I want to capture as much energy and like the folds in the clothing.
Yeah.
I want to describe the shape as much as I can with lighting, so then I can have actually more liberty to do abstractions, because all the concrete stuff is there in the lighting and stuff. So that's why I shoot my own references. Yeah.
Speaking of comics, have you ever worked in comics? Have you done any comic book storytelling at all?
No. Well, so I couldn't do interiors because that's just not my. I'm like a slow one image type of guy.
Gotcha.
But so I did do. I have had kind of like comic book adjacent projects, but one of my bucket list things is to do like a cover, or maybe a little run of cover. That's like a childhood bucket list thing. But I did. I got hired by Fortnite to do a Wolverine loading screen.
Cool.
That was my first like official Marvel thing, and then I did an official Marvel Wolverine print with Sideshow, which is a collectibles company. They do a lot of the crazy statues that you see at like comic book conventions and stuff like that. I feel like, I'm like honing in, possibly getting like a cover thing
Cool.
at some point.
So, just in terms of comics, I used to work at Marvel.
Wow! I did not know that.
Yeah. I worked there for about 7 years in the early 2000s. So, if you had any toys or graphic novels or trade paperbacks from that era, chances are you have some of my work. I did logos and illustrations and stuff for them. I didn't do interior comic work at all. I was in the design and packaging end of things. So I designed logos for the comic books and did trade paperback design and things like that, and toy packaging. Prior, oh yeah. But prior to Marvel, I also worked at another comic book company in the 90s, Valiant, and they were bought by Acclaim Entertainment at the towards the end of it. But let me just tell you a quick story, because while I worked at Valiant, I worked on some licensed properties. I was an editor and a writer there, and one of the licenses that we obtained was for Magic the Gathering, the card game, and it was a huge thing at the time. And I was editing a line of the Magic the Gathering comics called Antiquities on the World of Magic the Gathering, which is one of the card sets at the time. I had to, as an editor, I would select artists and get the right writer and get it all worked up and produced. But for the covers of Antiquities, I had to hire an artist that would really kind of capture the world and present it in a really unique way. So I called up this guy, and it happened to be an artist named George Pratt.
Wow.
So I know he's a mentor and an idol of yours, but at the time he was really great to work with. He came in and he did something super quick, and then he did I think 3 or 4 covers for us. But he was great to work with, and he really had, like you were saying, a really unique eye for presenting the subject matter. So we're connected there with George Pratt.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine for Magic the Gathering, because George really does an amazing job of capturing the entire atmosphere. Like I feel like, especially me and a lot of artists, one of the, I wouldn't say, maybe it's not a downfall, but one thing that I feel like always kind of leads me in a bad direction and I got to pull back is honing in too tight on one thing.
Mm.
Like, oh, I want to start getting detailed on this thing. And George Pratt is just amazing at being able to visualize his end goal. And he's just using whatever it takes to get there. But he's working at the same level. Like, he's using whatever kinds of paints, whatever kinds of tools, whatever. And he sees the whole thing as like shapes, textures, mark making. And it's not just like, oh, now I'm starting with, the left knuckle and then I'm going to paint to the right arm. And then, and I feel like I get caught up in that all the time. Like, and it kind of slows me down and then I got to pull back and look at the image all at once. So I can imagine that being a really cool set of work.
Yeah. Well, then for you, what then is the next evolution of your work? You've done stuff with Vice, with some comic adjacent stuff. You did the Criterion Collection. Where does it go from here? What are you looking to do with your work to push it and develop it further?
Well, I've loved working recently in the fine art world, just because, I think at this point commercially, almost like all my projects are dream projects because the stuff I get approached to do are things that are just exactly right up my alley. But the fine art world, I think, gives me a little bit more creativity and just making stuff for the sake of looking cool, and not having an application. Like I'm actually right behind me, I made this like a giant 6 foot like cutout painting.
Wow.
And I used the Comic-Con as an excuse to make that. I was like, oh, I'm gonna make this standee at Artist Alley. But I otherwise, if it was commercially, I wouldn't spend like 3 weeks, cutting this thing out of masonite, projecting and stuff. But I'm excited to be able to experiment more. Maybe even spend more time, even though I already spent a lot of time on my individual images. Obviously compared to comic book artists, but just to be able to like obsess more, go down different rabbit holes. I feel like the fine art world gives me a little bit more excuse to do that. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. But I mean, I have so many projects in the works. I think that just keeps everything fresh.
Is there anything you can talk about?
Let me see.
Don't get in trouble.
I don't know. I always have UFC related stuff, and it's always different too. It's weird because, like when I first got into it, I was thinking, sometimes I think at night, I'm like, how much like UFC related stuff could I actually do? But then, so far I've done like, Reebok used to be the official apparel sponsor of the UFC, so I did years of work for Reebok with UFC. Mm-hmm. I did stuff for the actual UFC store. Last time I did like an official UFC fight poster for MSG. I did artwork for the UFC 4 video game for like cool. EA Sports. And I still have cool projects, and it's awesome because that's like an endless source of inspiration for me. So I got a couple of UFC projects going on, and yeah, I think maybe that's all I can talk about right now.
Cool. Is for anybody that's going to be a new fan of yours as a result of hearing you here, are there pieces that you have in your collection that you think kind of embodies your work more so than others? Maybe it's just a favorite piece, but is there something in your collection so far where you're like, yeah, if I want to introduce myself to a new fan, this is what I'm going to show them?
I think the work I'm most known for is my work on Fightland, which was basically Vice's fight editorial. Just because I painted so many fighters, and it was actually where I got to be the most experimental because it was editorial work. So it's basically, I didn't have to think too much about the subject matter. They gave me so much freedom. But basically, I would just have to paint a fighter that was like on an upcoming card or like a legend. So I didn't have to think too much about what I was going to paint. And it was already something I was into. and I got to experiment a lot more. And I think it was throughout this run where I really developed a lot of techniques that I still use today. You know, a lot of the textures, the methods of approaching composition, stuff like that. So I would say the fight line work, and that's probably what comes up right away,
Yeah.
yeah, when you Google my name. So
Are you still a fan of martial arts films, action films, that kind of stuff?
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, so you know what happened was I feel like there was a point after I got into UFC like hardcore. I mean, you know, as a fan, that a lot of martial arts films were kind of like not doing it for me because
Hmm.
I, you know, I would be like, oh, that's fake. That wouldn't happen. You know, like that. I like got to this level, but then it kind of like went 360 a little bit. And then, you know, you appreciate the theatricality. You appreciate like the amazing moves and stuff. I mean, I just watched what is it called? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
that was like just an amazing blend of like kind of traditional kung fu with like Rick and Morty,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so I mean, stuff like that has kind of brought me back a little bit. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the guys that did the choreography, the martial arts choreography for that film, is some guys from the Martial Club, and I don't
Oh,
know if you're familiar with their stuff, but they're um, big kung fu film aficionados, but they're also filmmakers. So they create their own stuff. That some of it is in homage to the original kung fu flicks from the '70s and the '80s. But
they worked
the
on sorry, they worked on
go
Paper
ahead, no, go
Tigers.
ahead. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, Andy Lee and Brian Lee. And Andy was just the death dealer in the new Shang-Chi film.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. That's awesome for them. Yeah, I know. I recognize them from Paper Tigers. I actually was fortunate enough to do like preliminary artwork for that movie before
Cool.
they filmed the movie. Like the director Bao reached out to me about 5 years ago to do some promotional artwork while they were pitching, trying to do, trying to get funding, trying to, get the thing made. So I ended up doing kind of like it was a movie poster, but it was a movie poster without the real likenesses of the final actors in it because they hadn't cast it yet.
Sure.
So I did
Sure.
like promotional artwork for it, and yeah, I was exposed to like that stunt team and all that stuff. So it's awesome to see them. Seems like they're killing it.
That's cool. Oh, the Paper Tigers. Yeah, I've had a bunch of those guys on the show as well. I love that film. And
Yeah.
they're another bunch of creators that kind of understand what makes good martial arts films, good rather than just explosions of action for no reason. The story behind that one was so great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they did a great job of rooting it in kind of a more relatable story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So, are there martial artists in film or TV that you kind of look to now and think I could probably do something really cool with that guy?
Oh, I mean, well, I did like a fan art painting of Rush Hour with
Oh, nice.
for this gallery show, um, which is probably like the most like intense painting that anyone's ever made of Rush Hour. um, um, but I mean, yeah, I did like Jackie Chan fan art. I mean, I feel like Jackie Chan was like my Bruce Lee, obviously because all the movies
Sure.
were coming out as I was growing up. But I mean, I remember in Hong Kong, it wasn't even. It's like his movies weren't even movies. They're kind of more like, uh, wait till you see what he does in this movie. Almost like he's breaking a record every time. They're like, oh, this
Yeah.
is one he's water skiing on a hoverboard while fighting somebody. So it's almost like spectacles.
Yeah.
So and those kind of all blurred together. I feel like Jack Chan almost followed me to the U.S. because like I lived in Hong Kong until I was 10, and then I moved here in like '96, and that's kind of when he started blowing up. With Rush Hour and Shanghai Noon and stuff like that. So um, I mean, yeah, that'd be amazing to work on some kind of like Jackie Chan movie in some
Cool.
capacity. Yeah.
How about what somebody like Michelle Yeoh? Would you do something with her?
Oh yeah. I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, especially after watching. Oh my God! Like after watching Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, I forget how. I know how much of a legend she is. I mean, obviously, she's old as Jackie Chan, but you're like, wow, she's still doing it, and she looks amazing. She's like
Yeah,
graceful, has all the yeah, all the skills. And I feel like we really got to see another side of her in
yeah.
that movie, which was just amazing. Yeah.
All right, then. I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but what then would be that big dream project that you would want to fulfill with your artwork? Is there something out there that you're like, you know, I need to make this happen. I need to manifest this at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I do have most of my art ideas are kind of in the fine art world. Like, oh, what if I could do this? What if I could build this? What if I could create this? I think commercially, the bucket list item is to do a comic book cover. It's so stupid, but
All right.
that's like the number one thing. I'm like, dude, I gotta have that. I gotta go to the comic book shop on Wednesday and see my thing right there and be like, yeah, that's kind of like my childhood bucket list thing. So. Yeah, I think yeah, maybe a comic book cover.
All right. Cool. We'll talk. We'll talk.
Right.
Awesome. Now, I know you have an exhibit coming up, so tell the listeners where the exhibit is, what it's about, and how people can go get more information about it.
Oh yeah. So my next gallery show is called Foreman Fury, and it's the opening is on May 14th at Gallery Nucleus in LA. I mean, it's wushu based, and this body of work actually started for me about a couple of years ago. It's been a couple of years in the making. Ever since I got commissioned to do a mural in Chinatown in New York, and when I got commissioned, I was like, okay, obviously I got to do kung fu in Chinatown. But when I was doing research, there's so many possibilities. There's so many movies. I was like, oh, could I do Jackie Chan really big? Or so many styles, so many. And I really went down a rabbit hole through sport wushu, more specifically the floor routines of
Cool.
modern day sport wushu. And I was just amazed. It's basically like all the most amazing moves that you've ever seen in kung fu movies, like honed to perfection, like in a gymnastics floor routine. You
Yeah.
know, like uh, and it really is perfection. I watched all the championship videos because that's what the whole thing is judged on. Exactly, the stances are all precise. They're trying to make the jumps and kicks as explosive as possible, balanced out with the precision of where they land. The
Yeah.
angles of their strikes, and um, so I did this mural, but and I was really psyched about it. But I had so many more ideas because when you go down that rabbit hole, they have so many weapons. They have all the
Yeah.
the northern style, the southern style. They look all different. Um, so I just felt like I really had to. I had a lot more to say about that. I wanted to explore it a lot more. There's so many interesting angles. Like I consider it to be like the most artistic of the martial arts because it's so much judged on aesthetic and I think almost like what I was saying earlier with Bruce Lee, every pose is like made to look amazing. So I
Yeah.
had like so much fun, like creating these compositions with these different shapes. They're forming triangles, they're forming like tornadoes just with their movements and also with the clothing. Because I draw like UFC guys all the time, it's a lot of just muscles.
Muscle.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's like a lot of motion that is exaggerated because of the clothing, bright colors. It was just a lot of inspiration. So um, I really felt like it was a good excuse to make a whole body of work to explore it more. And I actually really feel like I've kind of just scraped the tip of the iceberg in my
Cool.
show, but I did my best.
Yeah, that's with I mean wushu in terms of trying to capture all that action. That had to have been a challenge because wushu is so rooted in the flow of movement and leaping and landing and then throwing around those weapons and all that.
Yeah.
So that must have been that must have really stretched your brain to try to figure out ways to capture all of that and make it look cool.
Oh yeah, and every routine, like I would try to find another angle for it because I'm like, oh, because they're running around, they're doing jump spinning kicks. I'm like, that looks awesome from that angle. But then what if I had it from this angle too? And so it was almost like I had a giant jigsaw puzzle of poses, and I was just trying to fit them together. And every combination was cool,
Yeah, that's cool.
So and it just looks everything. It's already abstract. Everything already feels abstract because the way they pose is like so extreme already, that it's already visually, it has like built-in visual interest. So at least for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I know, I'm sure it'll look really cool too, especially with the way that you depict it. So, where can the audience go to find out more information about this show?
So all the information on Gallery Nucleus's site. It should be up there pretty soon because it's coming up in a couple weeks. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I have some announcements, and I'm going to be sharing some behind the scenes process on my Instagram and social media. So yeah.
Awesome. And Gallery Nucleus, by the way, is hooking us up with some stuff to give away to our listeners. So stay tuned for that. GIAN GALANG, best of luck with that show. Best of luck with your artwork. You're doing some cool stuff. So I hope to be along for the ride for the evolution of your artwork. And maybe we'll see you on some comic shelves soon.
Oh yeah. Thanks so much, Jeff. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. It was real fun chopping it up. I feel like we connected on a lot of different levels.
Awesome. And tell George Pratt when you talk to him next that his work was one of the ones that has stuck with me through my comic book career and beyond. So congratulations to him as well.
Okay, well, cool.
GIAN, thank you so much for hanging out. Best of luck. If there's anybody in the audience that want to ask questions for GIAN, feel free to jump up. If not, GIAN, is there somewhere where the audience can follow you? Give me your socials. Let them know where they can follow you.
I think it's just everything that comes up with my name, GIAN GALANG. That's my Instagram. My Twitter is Galang43. Somebody already took my name. And then on my website, which is giangalang.com. So
Awesome. So all of those links will be in the show notes. The YouTube is up right now, and the audio will be released tomorrow. So GIAN, again, best of luck with everything. Awesome talking with you. Let's stay in touch and let me know when the next big thing happens, and we'll do this